Bye-bye.
Diba? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Ingat.
I guess my friends were right.
Oh, you're the shining star I wanna spend my nights with you. 구해줘 제발 나를 닮은 가면에서 짙은 고통이 파고들 네가 비비다운 원한 akong 말.
If karma is my boyfriend, karma is a god, karma is the priest.
나뿐인 만나
Baby, oh my god, yes and yes on that. I was really hoping. Oh my god.
Oh, parang maganda to ah. Saan ko na sa kanila?
On a break from the
Greetings! I'm Maria Gracicelis Baderes, welcoming you to Group 4's presentation on Part 2 of Individual Behaviors and Processes in Organizations, Chapter 5, Motivating Behavior. The objectives for this presentation, after learning the topics that the group will discuss, is first to define the motivations aspects, as well as the significance and basic historical view. Second, recognize and explain the motivational needs-based perspectives. Third, the major process-based perspectives on motivation must be recognized and explained. And lastly, is to identify the learning based on motivation. Let's talk about the nature of motivation. But first, what is motivation? Motivation is a set of forces that guides people to act in certain ways. The significance of motivation is that the job performance counts on motivation, ability, and environment. Take note. Motivation, ability, and environment results in good job performance.
In order to understand the motivational process, the motivational framework was created. So, what is this motivational framework about? So, this framework provides a useful way to see how motivational processes occur. Like when people experience a need deficiency, they seek ways to satisfy it, which results in a choice of goal-directed behaviors. And after performing that behavior, the individual experiences rewards or punishments that affect the original need deficiency. And as shown in the motivational framework, like from what I mentioned earlier, it shows first that a person experienced needs deficiencies, so they search for ways to satisfy their needs. And this results to a choice of goal-directed behaviors. The enactment of a behavioral choice, and after that is the person experiences rewards or punishments that will affect the original need deficiency. Hence, from the motivational framework, this is how the motivational processes occur. First is the need. It is anything an individual requires or wants. Then the need deficiency. This trigger attempts to satisfy the need. Goal-directed behaviors, which is the result from individuals trying to satisfy their need deficiencies. There's also the rewards and punishments that are known to be the consequences of the goal-directed behavior. And lastly, reassessment of need deficiency. It is an assessment of the extent to which the outcome addressed the original need deficiency. Now we have the early perspective's own motivation. It is known to have three approaches: the traditional approach, which is also known as the scientific management. It is an approach to motivation that assumes that employees are motivated by money. And another would be the human relations approach. It suggests that fostering a sense of employees' inclusion and decision-making will result in positive employee attitudes and motivation to hard work. The third approach is the human resource approach. It assumes that people want to contribute and are able to make genuine contributions. So to end my discussion on the nature of motivation, we will have individual differences and motivation. There is task-specific self-efficacy. It is said to be a person's belief in his or her capabilities to do what is required to accomplish a specific task. So there are 3 dimensions of self-efficacy: magnitude, beliefs about how difficult a task can be accomplished; strength, the beliefs about how confident the person is that a specific task can be accomplished; and generality, which are beliefs about the degree to which similar tasks can be accomplished.
Needs-based theories on motivation assume that deficiencies or needs are what drive human behaviors. Now, a theory relating to human needs that these needs-based theories are often derived from is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, created by American psychologist Abraham Maslow. The hierarchy of needs assumes that we rank our deficiencies based on their degrees of importance to us. The 2 basic classifications under this hierarchy are basic needs/deficiencies and growth needs. Now, Maslow's basic needs include physiological needs such as air, water, and food, security needs, which include physical security, shelter, and employment, and belongingness needs such as friendship, family, and intimacy. In his view, these are the basic needs that one needs to fulfill before they move on to the next type of needs, which are Maslow's growth needs. Now, these growth needs include esteem needs such as self-esteem, confidence, and respect, and self-actualization needs, which include morality, creativity, and a sense of achievement. Maslow states that satisfying the basic needs are a precondition for acknowledging one's growth needs. So, whether it be in the organizational structure or in life in general, if you want to fulfill your growth needs, you must first fulfill your basic needs. Figure 5.2 illustrates examples of the needs and how they relate specifically to the organizational structure. In an organization, physiological needs could refer to your salary, security needs would refer to your pension/retirement plan, and belongingness needs would refer to your coworkers. Esteem needs would then be your job title, and self-actualization needs would stem from a very challenging job. As in the basic version of the theory, your job title and challenging job would only fulfill your deficiencies in these areas if you have your basic needs such as your salary, job security, and decent job environment met. If these things are not met, then having a prestigious job title or a very challenging job would not be fulfilling to you in the very least. We now move on to 2 needs-based theories that build upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Clayton-Alderfer's ERG model is a modification of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It states that individuals have existence, relatedness, and growth needs. Multiple needs can motivate a person at one time. For example, someone's need to be fed can coincide with their need to be satisfied with their growth. The ERG model differs from the hierarchy of needs in that multiple needs can affect a person at a time, and the previous needs don't need to be satisfied in order for the others to be met. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, each need is a step towards the next. Therefore, if your physiological needs aren't met, saying you're not fed, you cannot fulfill your security needs. The ERG model differs in the fact that it believes that all of these needs can affect a person at a time, and that no one needs precedes or is a precognition or a precondition for another need. And therefore, all of these needs can affect a person. The next theory is the 2-factor theory, developed by American psychologist Frederick Irving Hertzberg. It states that motivation is affected by 2 factors: motivation factors that affect satisfaction, and hygiene factors that affect dissatisfaction. Motivation factors are inherent to the work. These include a sense of accomplishment when a goal is achieved. Hygiene factors are extrinsic to the work, meaning that it doesn't involve what the work entails itself. These include wages we receive for work, the possible pension plans we may receive, the environment that we get to work in, etc., etc., etc. Now, motivation factors operate on a scale of no satisfaction to satisfaction. Examples of these motivation factors include achievement, recognition, the work itself, responsibility, and advancement and growth. All of these work within the scale of no satisfaction and satisfaction, meaning that they either bring you no satisfaction or a hefty amount of satisfaction. None of these things can bring you negative satisfaction or dissatisfaction. The next type of factor is the hygiene factor. Hygiene factors, meanwhile, operate on a scale of no dissatisfaction to dissatisfaction. Now, these hygiene factors include supervision, working conditions, interpersonal relationships, pay and job security, and company policies. These either give you no sense of dissatisfaction or greatly dissatisfy you because none of them truly bring satisfaction to you as a worker. The final framework that we'll be discussing is the acquired needs framework. The acquired needs framework is centered on our needs for achievement, affiliation, and power. Achievement refers to accomplishing a goal, while affiliation refers to the feeling of belongingness that one feels with their surrounding peers, and power refers to control. This framework identifies these needs and states how we can achieve these needs in a workplace environment. Now, these frameworks and theories all have in common is that they all identify a need that the worker has, whether it be their salary or the work environment or a job title or achievement or power, control, etc., etc., etc. And it identifies that achieving or accomplishing or fulfilling that need will lead to the worker performing in an ideal manner. Therefore, if you want your workers to perform in the way that you want for their job, you have to fulfill the needs that they have, whether it be their pay or job security or achievement, so on and so forth.
Here you have to pay attention to how individuals act in order to satiate their wants, on how individuals rate their level of happiness after achieving these objectives. This includes the notion of equity and expectations. The motivational equity theory. Equity theory emphasizes that people desire to avoid the perceived inequity and to be treated with they see as an equal. Inequity is the conviction that we are being treated unfairly in comparison to others, while equity on the other hand is a conviction that we are being treated right and fairly, creating perception of equity. This put an emphasis on the desire to avoid being perceived as injustice and to be treated fairly. People form equity perception by comparing their circumstances to those of others. They are motivated to maintain the current situation if they perceive equity. They are motivated to use one or more strategies shown here to reduce equity if they perceive it. In the comparison of oneself to others. In equity, we have the altering the inputs, changing the outcome, having changed on your self-perception, change your perception of others, changing the evaluation, and leaving the situation on leave. While on the other hand, equity motivates you to organize your current situation. Motivational expectancy theory. Expectancy theory suggestions that people are motivated by how much they want something and how likely they believe they will get it. Here we have the important elements. Expectancy of effort to performance. The perceived likelihood that effort will result in a good performance. Expectancy of performance to outcome. The perceived likelihood that performance will result in specific outcomes. An outcome, it is anything that occurs as a result of a certain behavior. And lastly, the balance. The balance is the attractiveness or unattractiveness value of a specific outcome for a person.
And now, for the basic expectancy model, Victor Vroom is generally credited with first applying the theory to motivation in the workplace. The model's general components are effort, which is the result of motivated behavior, performance, and outcomes. As seen in the figure 5.5, the expectancy theory is the most complex model of employee motivation in organizations. As shown in the model, the key components of expectancy theory are effort to performance expectancy, performance to outcome instrumentality, and outcomes, each of which has an associated valence. These components interact with effort, the environment, and the ability to determine an individual's performance. The effort to performance expectancy is a person's perception of the probability that effort will lead to performance. Performance to outcome instrumentality, on the other hand, is the individual's perception of the probability that performance will lead to certain outcomes. Outcome and valences. Outcome is anything that results from performing a particular behavior, while valences is the degree of attractiveness or unattractiveness a particular outcome has for a person. Victor Broom is generally credited with first applying the theory to motivation in the workplace. The behaviors model's general components are effort, which is the result of motivated behavior, performance, and outcomes.
At this time, we'll be explaining the Porter-Lawler model. So who made this model and what is it really about? This model was developed by Lyman Porter and Edward Lawler in the year 1958 and is created as the extended version of Broom's theory. Now, the Porter-Lawler model mainly points out that it focuses on the connection between satisfaction and performance and how it relates to each other. The conventional theory presupposes that performance results from satisfaction. This model assumes that if rewards are adequate, high level of performance might result in satisfaction as long as its benefit is sufficient. The perceived equity of intrinsic and extrinsic reward or incentives determines that satisfaction that is received. The expectancy model by Porter and Lawler provides interesting insights into the satisfaction and relationships performance. As this example shows, according to the model, satisfaction is based on the alleged equity of rewards for both intrinsic and extrinsic performance, that is, as opposed to performance resulting in satisfaction, which many could anticipate that this model argues that it is performance rather than ultimately results in satisfaction. Evaluation and implications. Many different researchers have examined expectancy theory in a diverse of environments approaches that are used. Due to its complexity, academics have found expectancy theory to be rather challenging to test. Expectancy theory predicts that people will not participate in motivated behavior unless they value the expected awards, believe that they are confident that their efforts will lead and produce their performance, believe that their efforts will lead to the desired benefits.
My fellow student Alisa Marqueses and I will now address the learning-based perspective on motivation. To actually start, what exactly is learning? Learning is defined as a relatively permanent change in behavior or behavioral potential that occurs as a result of direct or indirect experience. Before I continue, I have a question for our audience. I just wanted to ask you, have you ever wondered how learning occurs? Learning occurs in two methods. First is traditional view, aka classical conditioning. This is a simple method of learning in which a conditioned response is linked to an unconditioned stimulus. Second, contemporary view, aka learning as a cognitive process. For this learning method, people are assumed to be conscious and are active participants in their learning. Moving on to reinforcement theory and learning. Reinforcement theory holds that behavior is a function of consequences. Under this topic, we have operant conditioning, aka Skinner. In this, it is said that behavior is a function of its consequences, and reinforcement is the consequence of behavior. Next is social learning. Social learning is when people observe the behaviors of others, recognize the consequences, and alter their own behavior as a result. First, behavior being observed and imitated must be relatively simple. Second, observed and imitated behavior must be concrete and non-intellectual. Lastly, learner must have the physical ability to imitate the observed behavior. In connection to the previous topic, we have behavior modification. This is the application of reinforcement theory to influence the behaviors of people in organizational settings. Now, let us talk about the different kinds of reinforcement. First is positive reinforcement. This is the reward or other desirable outcome that a person receives for engaging in specific behaviors. Second is negative reinforcement, also known as avoidance. This is the opportunity to avoid or escape from an unpleasant circumstance after exhibiting a certain behavior. Third is punishment, an unpleasant or aversive consequence that results from behavior. And lastly is extinction. This decreases the frequency of behavior by eliminating a reward or desirable consequence that follows that behavior. Now, on to the last part of my discussion, social learning in organizations. Social learning in organizations occurs when people observe the behaviors of others, recognize the consequences, and alter their own behavior as a result. There are three conditions for social learning. First is behavior being observed and imitated must be relatively simple. Second, observed and imitated behavior must be concrete and non-intellectual. Third, learner must have the physical ability to imitate the observed behavior. And lastly, behavior modification. This is the application of reinforcement theory to influence the behaviors of people in organizational settings.
Upon discussing social learning in organizations, we will now be discussing the type of reinforcers wherein individual behavior can be affected when stimulus is either presented or removed after a particular behavior. This is also dependent on whether the stimulus is positive or negative. In this figure, you will see the nature of the stimulus and the actions. Under the nature of the stimulus is the positive and negative indicator. And for the actions, you will see the present stimulus and the removed stimulus, in which, if the nature of stimulus is positive and it is present the stimulus, it is a positive reinforcement and has a punishment of increase in behavior. While if the nature of stimulus is negative and it is a removed stimulus, it is a negative reinforcement and has an extinction or decrease in behavior. For the second to the last learning-based perspectives on motivation, the timing of reinforcement. Under the timing of reinforcement is A or R, fixed ratio, fixed interval, variable ratio, and the fourth one is the variable interval. The nature of fixed ratio is the behavior enforced according to the number of behaviors exhibited with the number of behaviors needed to gain reinforcement held constant. Fixed ratio schedules produce high rates of response until a reward is received, in which it is then followed by a pause in the behavior. One example of this is a toy maker produces toys in the store only buy toys in batches of 5. When the maker produces toys at a high rate, he makes more money. In this case, toys are only required when all 5 have been made. The toy making is rewarded and reinforced when 5 are delivered. While in fixed interval, the nature of is that the behavior is reinforced according to some predetermined constant schedule based on time. A fixed interval schedule delivers a reward when a set of amount of time are having or has elapsed. This schedule usually trains subjects, persons, animals, or organisms to the time the interval slows down. The response rate after a fixed interval reinforcement and the quick increase towards the end of the interval. An example of this is college students studying for final exam, in which most of the universities are having their exams, or most of them are scheduled in a fixed interval in between final exams. For the variable ratio, the behavior is reinforced according to the number of behaviors exhibited, but the number of behaviors needed to gain reinforcement varies from one time to the next. This schedule produces a high and steady response rates. One example of this is gambling at a slot machine. Gambling or lottery game rewards us unpredictably. Each win requires a different number of lever pulls. Gamblers keep pulling the lever many times in hopes of winning. Therefore, for some people, gambling is not only habit forming, but is also very addictive and hard to stop. While in variable interval, behavior is reinforced after periods of time, but the time span varies from one time to the next. This schedule usually generates a steady rate of performance due to the uncertainty about the time of the next reward and is taught to a habit forming. An example of this is students whose grades depend on the performance of pop quizzes. Throughout the semester, they study regularly instead of cramming at the end. In this situation, students know the teacher will give a pop quiz throughout the year, but they cannot determine well when it will occur. So here comes the last learning-based perspectives on motivation. It is called motivating the right behavior. Motivating the right behavior defines the problem. It answers the question, what is it that could be improved? It identifies and defines the specific behaviors that you wish to change. It records and tracks the occurrence of the target behavior. It also analyzes the current negative consequences of undesired behavior and arranges for more positive consequences to follow the desired behavior. And lastly, it evaluates whether the behavior has improved and by how much it improves.
Moving on to the next slide, this talks about the different motivation concepts and theories that can be applied to various managerial challenges to enhance employee motivation. These sum up the managerial challenges that every theory has that causes the employees to lose their motivation as they go on to their respective jobs. These are the managerial challenges that were mentioned. First, firm has a low-cost business strategy but needs to motivate employees, which is present on every theory. Second, an employee feels he cannot meet his performance goals, which is present on self-efficacy and expectancy theory. Third, an employee underpaid relative to her coworkers, which is present on two-factor and equity theory. Fourth, an employee engages in inappropriate behavior like bullying and ridiculing coworkers, which is only present on reinforcement theory. Fifth, a talented employee is not challenged at work, which is present in needs, two-factor, and expectancy theory. And the last one, because the work is repetitive, some employees find it boring and hard to stay motivated, which is only present on needs and two-factor theory. Now, the second to the last slide tackles about the social behavior in action. These parts are mostly the summary of the chapter that asks some questions about the topics that were discussed in this lesson and some self-explanatory questions. It also asks some of the experiences that an employee may encounter as they go by their respective roles. These are the questions that were asked. When has your level of performance affected by your motivation, by your ability, and by the environment? Second, identify example based on experience that supports and refute on Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. The third one, have you experienced inequity in a job or in a class and how it affects you? And lastly, which is likely to be a more serious problem? Perceptions of being unrewarded or perceptions of being over-rewarded. Now for the last slide, in connection to the previous topic, social behavior and action, it also talks about some topics that were discussed in this lesson and also asks some self-explanatory questions. It also asks some examples from the internet that is related to a particular topic. The questions that were asked were, do you believe expectancy theory is too complicated to be applied directly on organizational structures? If not, why? Next, do the Porter and Lawler proposed correlations between performance and satisfaction seem plausible? Cite instances that both back up and challenge the model. Next, identify times when you have encountered each of the four sorts of reinforcement. And lastly, list the 5 types of reinforcement you encounter most frequently and how frequently do you get each of them.
Ang pusikle for them ganoy at ito po ang aming performance